y'all, there are so many books out here in the universe on BookTube that are just so hyped up, and it feels like everybody is reading the same things. It feels like you can go to almost any channel and be like, oh, well, they're reading this book, and so is this person, and so is this person, and so is this person. And that's not a bad thing. That is not inherently a bad thing. I like the hyped books. I read the hyped books. I join in on the readathons and the buddy reads with like the hyped books. So we're not saying that's a bad thing at all. But what I'm saying is I have some books here that I absolutely loved that no one is talking about, or very few people are talking about. And I feel like they are underhyped and underrepresented here on this bookish corner of the internet. So I wanted to hype them up a little. I wanted to talk about them. Some of these are older books. They're like more backlist titles. They're not really like new releases or anything like that. These are books that can be easily found probably in your library. At least one of them is on Kindle Unlimited. So I feel like these are just books that more people should read, and I want to see more people reading them. The first book I want to talk about is the one that I know for a fact is available on Kindle Unlimited because it is a self-published book, and that is Awakens by Elise Kova. This is a massive series that she has done that takes place in this fantasy world where we basically have elemental magic, and it is so good. It is pretty romance heavy. This is definitely a fantasy romance. This first series in this world that she has created is a 5-book series that starts with Awakens, and we follow Vala, who is this girl who works in a library in the palace, and she's nobody. She's just this palace library assistant. And one day the prince falls ill, and the people in the library are searching and searching and searching for a way to help him, and she ends up like unknowingly saving him, but it wasn't the prince that she thought she was saving. She thought she was saving the not oldest, the second prince, who is like this really well-known, outgoing, they call him the Golden Prince, that everybody loves, but who she really saved was the heir to the throne, and he is the like fire prince. He is like a fire sorcerer in this world, and nobody likes him. He's kind of seen as this like terrible human, but she ends up kind of like bound to him in a way, and come to find out she has these magical powers that nobody knew about, and it kind of ensues from there. She's got forbidden powers, it's got forbidden romance, it's got enemies to lovers, and it's well written. And y'all know I'm not like the biggest romance reader, but I loved it. It was so good, y'all. The next underhyped book that I just never see anybody talking about is Child of a Mad God by R.A. Salvatore. This is such a cool book. This was the only R.A. Salvatore book that I have read, and I definitely don't plan for it to be the last one. I actually picked up the second book in this series, and I'm excited to get to it sometime within the next couple months because I really, really, really enjoyed this story. It is about these people, and we follow these two kind of groups of people. Some of them live at the base of this mountain, and then we have this group that lives in the mountains. The group that lives at the base of this mountain, they are just like your normal fishermen, like villagers, just kind of going about their day to day. But they do this weird thing where they bind babies' heads when they're born because, you know, baby's head is still soft. So basically they look really weird, and they make them like pointed or like mushy, like they just bind their heads so they look really weird. And then we have the people that live on the mountain who are basically our antagonists in a way. And we have the females who are, like, trying to get into this, like, coven, like, this very selective, like, coven of witches, and then the men are all, like, warriors, and what they do is they go on periodic raids of all the villages surrounding the bottom of this mountain, and they just take what they want, and they will bring back slaves. Well, one of the slaves that they brought back was a pregnant woman, and she didn't get a chance to, like, bind the head of the baby. The baby was born there, and we follow the baby as he grows up. And then we follow another girl who is an orphan, and she really grows up wanting to be in this coven, but she's very free-spirited and, like, inquisitive, and she questions a lot of things. And in this world, again, it's very dark, it's very brutal, it's very patriarchal. If you do pick this up, there are a lot of trigger warnings, definitely violence, death, sexual assault, and rape. Like, it's a pretty dark world, but it's so good, and I really want to read the second one, and I feel like not enough people are reading this. The next book that I feel like I would love to see more people reading and talking about, I actually think is not hyped because it is more of a backlist book. It is like an older YA fantasy, and that is Girl of Fire and Thorns by Rae Carson. I read this a couple months ago, and I enjoyed the hell out of it. We follow our protagonist, who is a princess who is married off to a king of another realm, but she is not your typical princess. She's not this, like, beautiful, like, loving girl. She is very self-conscious because she's fat, and it's kind of, like, picked on, and she's degraded for it, and it's really sad, and I kind of see myself relating to that because I have struggled with weight issues my entire life, basically. So seeing that is something that I enjoyed in a way, not, you know what I mean? You always want to see yourself. So that's something that I saw there. And you kind of follow her and then this group of rebels. And it's really, really cool. It's such a good story. What it is the princess has what they call this godstone embedded in her stomach that she was born with. So she knows that she is destined to do something, but she doesn't know what. She doesn't know how this godstone works. It's not like it gives her, like, magical powers. It's just this strange, like, her trying to figure it out and then going on this kind of traveling quest with this group of rebels. And it's really, really well done. And for a YA fantasy, it is not super typical, I don't think. There's a lot of trope subversion in here, I feel like, that I appreciated so much, especially being that this is, like, slightly older YA. So really think this is a great one to pick up. I have the second book, like, on deck, ready to read very soon as well. So we'll see if my thoughts continue to be the same. The next book that I think is super underrated, underhyped. There are a couple people here on YouTube talking about it, so I'll leave their links down below. Elliot from Elliot Brooks loves this book. Her ranting about it is what made me pick it up in the first place. And then I don't have a degree in reading. She has ranted about it and loved it, and, or not ranted, but raved. Rant and raved about it, you know what I mean. This is such a good book, and that is Fireborn. And the sequel is actually coming out in 2021, which makes me more excited, except for the fact that they changed the covers on me, which the new cover is beautiful, but, like, I have the hardback in the old cover, so yay. Yay me. Whatever. Mismatching books is, like, my signature, apparently, because I never rebuy them. I'm always like, whatever, we got mismatched books. But this is a YA fantasy that I feel is a little bit older than our young end of YA. It's definitely on that older end. And it's about this boy who is basically the heir to the dragon throne. And his whole family was killed in what they call Palace Day, which is this big revolution that took place where they killed all of the monarchy, basically, and he watched his family get slaughtered, and he is saved and sent to this orphanage, and, like, no one knows that he survived, right? Like, no one knows. And he ends up making friends with this girl who's also in the orphanage, but the girl is there because her family was killed by the Dragon Riders, who are his family, back before the revolution. And we are following the two of them now as they are older, and they are basically in school as Dragon Riders. And you get to see them learning and competing to be, you know, the, like, #1 Dragon Rider. They are it's kind of like a military school, and there's still a caste system. And the whole thing is they're saying that this caste system is so much better because you can take a test, and it's called the metals test, and you get to see what you test as. Are you going to be gold, which is like the high society, or silver, or iron, or brass? But basically, I mean, it's still a caste system, and it's still kind of set up to make the poor people fail, but you just kind of feel a little better about it. And there's a bunch of political intrigue and propaganda, and I loved this so much more than I thought I would. So this is one that I really want to see more people reading, and I'm excited to pick up the second book when it comes out. All right, the next underhyped book is actually a duology that I feel like more people should read, and that is The Savage Song, which is the first book in the Monsters of Verity duology by V.E. Schwab. I actually did a full review of this duology, so I'm not going to talk on this one much. I will link to that review, but basically this is, again, an older side of YA fantasy that kind of subverts tropes, and it follows two people, so we get 2 points of view. They're basically the son and daughter of two heads of warring factions, and there are monsters, and we kind of get to see the whole idea of who's the real monster, humans or actual monsters. So it's just really cool how it plays on that. This is a very romance light, like no romance at all in the first book, and like a kiss in the second book. So if you are not one that wants like romance in your stories, this is a really good one to pick up. And it's definitely a sadder, darker, more heartbreaking YA story. So be aware of that if you do pick this up, but go check out my review if you want to know more. But this is such a cool duology. The next one is another book that I also did a full review on, and that is Magic for Liars by Sarah Gailey. This is such a good urban fantasy standalone book. I really want to see more people reading it. It is definitely set in a magic school, but it is not the adult Harry Potter like some people have pitched it to be. I find that kind of annoying, honestly. We follow our main character, who is a private investigator who is hired to investigate a murder at this magical school. Her twin sister happens to be a teacher at this magical school. So her sister is magic and she is not. So that makes for some really interesting familial drama. And then we have like the thriller kind of aspect where they're investigating this murder. And we also have like a really cool subversion of the chosen one trope that shows up in a subplot. It is such a cool story. I highly recommend you pick it up. Again, if you do pick this up, there is a pretty graphic abortion scene in this, so be wary of that if that is something that bothers you. I feel like I have reviews for a lot of these books, and like I don't do a whole lot of standalone reviews, but like these books in particular are ones that I've done standalone reviews for, so that should tell you something. The next one is Born by Jeff Vandermeer. This is weird sci-fi. Like that is the best way to describe it. It is, I think, new weird is what the genre actually is. But like I said, I did a full review of this. I will link for you so we don't have to ramble about it too terribly much. We follow Rachel, who is a scavenger in this strange post-apocalyptic world where this company called The Company kind of destroyed shit. They let their biotech run wild, and we are now in a world that is controlled by a giant flying bear named Morg. And Rachel is scavenging to survive. Her boyfriend that she lives with is a former employee of the company, so he is trying to kind of make biotech on his own. And she ends up finding this blob that looks like a sea urchin, and she brings it back home and she names it Born. She thinks it's a plant, but it kind of gains sentience, and a lot of it is her story with Born, and it's very much a maternal story, and she is like this silent badass character because she's not outwardly a fighter and a badass, but she just is such a strong character. And Born is just so fascinating, and the like little bit of love story that we get between Rachel and Wick is just really well done. So I highly recommend you go pick this one up as well. All right, this is the last book that I have to recommend for my underrated books that I think more people should be reading, and that is Women's War by Jenna Glass. This is a pretty typical fantasy medieval setting, very dark, very patriarchal, but we are following older female characters, one of which is a mother, and it is just really cool and well done. There's a lot, again, of trope subversion, and we get a lot of violence and sexual assault, and it's very dark, but it's done well, I think. It is done to move the plot forward and not in a meaningless way. And there's some revenge in here, and I'm not gonna go too terribly into this book because, for one, I've talked about it so many times. I also have a full review of why you should read Women's War, so you can go check that out. I will link that for you as well. Just know that this is a very dark patriarchal world where some women are trying to overthrow the patriarchy with magic, and that's really all you need to know about this one. So pick it up. I will be reading the second book soon, and the third book is actually coming out in 2021, so I'm very excited for that. All right, y'all, these are all of my underrated books that I feel like more people should be reading, picking up, enjoying. If you've read any of these, let me know what you think. If you will be picking up any of these, let me know which ones, and I would love to talk to you about them and see what you think when you're done with them. All right, well, my name is Jessie, and I will see you next time. Bye.